In this video, let's cover file minification strategies that will help you reduce the sizes of your files and will help you speed up your website loading speeds.
This video is brought to you by EpiPies Academy.
And we're just going to cover some good basic approaches that are common good practices. The first one is to essentially minify, compress, and cache your files. That goes for your JavaScript, for your CSS, whatever you can. Sometimes you cannot do that because it might be third-party libraries. But if it's your own libraries, that your own code, you can always minify, compress, cache. The only caveat to that is caching and compression. Sometimes in different server configurations, it's done differently. So I would strongly recommend contacting hosting support because you don't want to break some settings on your server and cause damage. So you want to get support from your hosting provider. That's exactly how I set mine up. And on mine, for example, I had something like CDN was available for free. And so they can help you set that up. And I didn't want to mess with that on my own because it takes a little bit more server savvy and server configuration savvy that most people just don't have. Even if you're technical, you might not know the details of how to set all those things up, and you're always at risk of breaking it. So I strongly recommend working with either a professional or your hosting support to help you with caching and server-side compression and enabling gzip and all these things. Also, the other strategy that I really strongly suggest to you is what I would call reconsider, trim, preload, and async. It's the other strategy, which is, do you really need the code? You should always reconsider, like maybe you have some fancy CSS third-party library, but it might give you a 1 or 2 second slowdown of your page rendering because you need to fetch that library. So if you have some default style that you can have that is 80 or 90% of the prettiness of the third-party style, maybe you don't want to sacrifice the speed, so you settle for the 80 or 90% of the prettiness of design, but you gain side load speed. And so it's a trade-off either way. Either you make your site more beautiful or you make it simpler and faster to load, which either of those things will give you its own benefits, and it's just your decision. Sometimes you just cannot have both. The way you can get closer to having both is by trimming your own CSS file and sometimes copying the third-party libraries internally to your server, and then trimming things like that you are actually not using. So there's often some CSS code that you maybe change many times, and a big part of your CSS file may be unused, but your browser still has to parse it, and that takes time. So if you trim things, that can help you speed up your page load speed. And there's the preload tag that I cover elsewhere in the course. You can use that to start loading things faster as your page loads. And of course, there's async for different scripts that don't need to render immediately as the page loads. So these are all tactics, little tactics that together really combine to speed up your site. So every time you have some files, CSS files, JavaScript files, rich media files, run through this checklist and ask yourself, have I done all of this? Can I do is there something here that I haven't done that I can do? Because these are all relatively low-hanging fruit, and they're all going to help you speed up your page load.